and good afternoon to our afternoon session on researching in Cheshire. Our first speaker is Elsa Churchill, who is the genealogist at the Society of Genealogists. She teaches regularly in the SOG's education programme, as well as events around this country at overseas and conferences, and she has a particular interest in genealogy before 1837. The floor is yours, Elsa.
Well, thank you very much for coming to join this collaboration between the Society of Genealogists, Cheshire Archives and Family History Society of Cheshire to help us learn about family history resources for Cheshire. We'll also be learning how the Vision of Britain through time and Victoria County history websites can help us do research in this county. I think I've got about 20 minutes to get through resources at the Society of Genealogists. We have a lot. The Society of Genealogists is the oldest and largest genealogical member society in the UK, which tries to create a working genealogical research hub at our new premises in Wharf Road in London. We've been there now for about 2 years and we're just settling in, but it is actually our sixth building, so we've been around since 1911. In general, the library and archive team concentrate on collecting resources relating on how to do genealogy. So as you expect, we have textbooks, guides, journals and appropriate periodicals. We particularly look to see what your ancestors did in their lives by collecting things relating to their occupations, professions and trades, etc. So also their education or apprenticeship, military service records, tax records, criminal records, poor laws, newspapers, trade directories, ecclesiastical licenses, church court records, etc., etc. We also like to encourage people to write up their family history and collect compiled family histories and pedigrees and genealogy research notes and papers to sort of answer the question, what's been done on this family before. And of course, we collect resources relating to where our ancestors lived, particularly for the UK and overseas, resources and records. That includes indexes, finding aids, copies and transcripts of vital records of birth, marriage and death, church baptisms, marriage and burial, census directories, and lots of other local records. So these subject areas can be found amongst the library books, and the library has books, electronic and micromedia on and off the shelves, which means it is vital to use our catalogue, which we call SOGCAT, and as we're in a Family Search affiliate library, the Family Search catalogue makes many records available at the Society of Genealogists as well. We are an archive which holds original manuscript documents, research papers and notes, special collections and pedigrees, all of which are currently stored off-site, which means you do need to use the PDF paper finding aids and lists available on the library pages of our website. That's in anticipation of our new Collections Plus archive catalogue, which we use so behind the scenes as we're compiling it, but that's not yet available for the public use. And we do make certain elements from the library available to members on what we call SOG Explore. That's our digital collections, that's some original records from our archives, indexes, databases, and digitised books and various projects where our members have indexed records. All of this diversity of where you can find things in the society means that the information on the website is incredibly important, and I'd certainly look at all the information pages on research on the website, which gives you information about the library and the archives and the hub. A lot of work is currently being undertaken into the website, literally as we speak, for the launch of a new website, keeping our fingers crossed, at the end of January. And so from this month, you will see some changes as we go over to our new provider. But all the information that you need will be in the website, and hopefully as time goes on in the very near future, a lot easier to navigate and find it. So the research page of the website tells you how to access our collections and visit the library if needed. It's not necessary to pre-book your visit, but if you're travelling a long distance and would like to reserve a library computer, it is a good idea to perhaps pre-book and let us know you're coming. And all the information about how to book a visit and other is on the Visit Us section of the library pages. Access is free to members, but non-members can pay a daily search fee to use our facilities. As I mentioned, not all of our collections are actually kept on site. So if you need to order collection items from off-site storage, we do ask that you give us about a week's notice and use the collection order form with details from the catalogue, from the author, title, shelf mark, etc. So we can bring the item in from store. And the library page is also linked to the library catalogue, the digital resources, the archive finding aids, and the collection guides, and there is a useful SOG researcher handbook, which is probably a good idea to have a quick look round, as it sort of makes sense of the various ways you can access information in the library and remotely. And for those who can't personally visit the Society's premises in Wharf Road, the library pages do have information about our limited search copy service and if appropriate, guidance on employing a professional researcher. The Society does not do your research for you. We think it's much more fun to provide you with the resources to do it yourself. But if you do need to employ a professional, there are links to the AGRA and other professional research institutions that can help you. With so much information not on the open shelves at Wharf Road, it is vital to use the library catalogue to identify what you want and use the shortcuts via the search tabs on the website. That will take you to the library catalogue. They're highlighted in yellow, and while you can also take the direct link to the library catalogue to do more sophisticated, advanced and simple keyword searches of the catalogue, the search on this sort of start search box online there is a good way to begin, perhaps by putting in the name of a place where your ancestors come from to see what resources we might hold. Most genealogists know that sources are most associated with localities and places, but of course you can do more sophisticated searches in the catalogue as well. The SOG groups everything for place according to the pre-1974 county boundary changes for the UK, and therefore we still retain the pre-1974 county and parish names in the catalogue and our archive finding aids. So that's very much as it was largely when our ancestors lived there. So the Cheshire has historically included all the Wirral Peninsula and parts of southern Greater Manchester and northern Derbyshire, but excluded Widnes and Warrington. And these areas in the north that became part of the metropolitan counties of Greater Manchester and Merseyside, such as Stockport, which previously a county borough, and Altrincham, Hyde, Duckingfield and Stalybridge in the northeast, which are now all part of Greater Manchester, are in our library catalogue, are classified and still counted as Cheshire. Much of the Wirral Peninsula in the northwest, including the county boroughs of Birkenhead and Wallasey, joined Merseyside as the metropolitan borough of Wirral, but in our library they remain Cheshire. At the same time, the Tintwistle Rural District was transferred to Derbyshire, and these constituent parishes are still considered Cheshire in our catalogue. The area of South Lancashire, not included within either the Merseyside or Greater Manchester counties, including Widnes in the county borough of Warrington, was added to the non-metropolitan county of Cheshire, but in our library they remain Lancashire. So by place, it's usually the parishes where your ancestors lived at the time they lived in them, and we do tend to use the IHGS parish maps as published in the Fillmore Atlas as our guide for the parishes and where they were. But other administrative units, such as a registration district or hundred, can be useful search terms in the catalogue as well as county and place. A typical county holding within our collection will include published material, transcripts and index of records, as well as surrogate copies of original records on microfiche and film, and increasingly digital. General county-wide material for all Cheshire could be, for example, county histories, compiled pedigrees for families in the area, tax lists such as transcriptions of the half tax, will indexes, finding aids, and increasingly transcripts and copies of the records themselves. Local items, specifically for places in Cheshire, might be parish chest records such as rate book, local quarter session records, borough records, local apprenticeships, freeman records, etc. And if everything for place, but not the church registers. That's a separate section in the library, and church register copies it can be copies, transcripts, indexes, and finding aids. And we've got 657 items relating to parishes and their church records and registers listed in SOGCAT. These registers include those for the Church of England, christenings, marriages, and burials, as well as records for nonconformists and other denominations. A significant number of monumental inscriptions from churchyards and cemeteries listed in the catalogue. About 420 items, many of which were published by the Family History Society of Cheshire. We do go out of our way to buy their publications, or indeed many transcribed by our own members. All the bound parish registers and monumental inscription transcripts, which were formerly on the open Cheshire shelves in our previous building, have, since we have moved, been scanned and are available as searchable PDFs to view in the library. This is really part of how we could reduce the actual shelvage in our new building. Therefore, we have a pilot project to upload these transcripts and monumental inscriptions into our online members platform, SOG Explore. We're uploading those where we have the copyright and they're ours to upload, and those which aren't our copyright can be viewed with the scanned PDFs in the library. Off-site storage now has things like census indexes, directories, poll books, periodicals of family and local history societies, county records societies, etc. But that's a sort of general composite idea of what you will find in the library. It's sort of as the basic subject headings. So using place terms within the catalogues, you can look for a particular place. That will be a Cheshire parish or a registration district or an ecclesiastical court if that's appropriate, the hundreds, the palatine, etc. So for example, the catalogue suggests there are 22 items for Altrincham, which is in Cheshire, and note it's also a registration district that you can search on as well. And for larger towns like Stockport, it shows we have 109 items, and these are cross-referenced to narrow terms such as chapelries and hamlets within the parish, or indeed individual ecclesiastical parishes within the town. So if it's got more than one parish, we quite often will differentiate between them for the purposes of recording what we have in the library. For Frodsham, there are 24 items listed in the that we have in the catalogue. These include microfilm copies of original registers, but there might also be bound transcripts, many of which have been published by local record societies, for example. This also includes Wesleyan nonconformist material, and of course the parish is covered by Bertram Merrill's Marriage Index, compiled by published by Cheshire Family History Society. We have a copy of that on microfiche in the library. The Society of Genealogists Boyd's Marriage Index only covers about 9 Cheshire parishes, so it's not particularly relevant for this county. And we do, of course, have copies of the Quaker Digest, which will be useful for research in the county. So, say for Frodsham, there are local histories, early charters, lists of those who contributed to the fund for rebuilding St Paul's Cathedral in 1677, for example, as well as sort of the standard records that you'd expect us to have for that place. In addition to SOG library access, we have access to the major genealogy websites such as Ancestry, Find My Past, The Genealogist and My Heritage, etc. within the library. Also, the Society of Genealogists is a family search partner affiliate library, so records that have been scanned and digitised by Family Search and listed in the Family Search catalogue can usually be viewed at the Society. And of course, increasingly, Family Search full text is making previously unindexed or minimally indexed items more accessible within the catalogue, and these items can be viewed at the library. Here, as for example, there are the Frodsham Poor Law records, and again, these have the ability for full text search results, having had AI applied to them and viewable in the library. In addition to parish records and monumental inscriptions, as I said, we collect what we call local items. These comprise source places within a county, such as local histories, local war biographies, parish chest records other than registers, such as church wardens' accounts, settlement certificates or vaccinations, or in this case, a history of Methodism in Langley. So as well as thinking about place, you might want to broaden out your search of our library catalogue to see what we have by perhaps looking to see what we have, the things that cover the whole county. So if you were to search for Cheshire General, this will take you from accounts to yeoman. This can include general guides, record guides and genealogy guides to the county, bibliographies such as those published by Stuart Raymond, the Cheshire Genealogy bibliographies, county histories, Ormerod's, Earwaker, etc., transcriptions of tax lists, heraldic visitations. So in general items can be quite diverse. For example, Cheshire General shows that we have a list of motor vehicle registrations for the county, published by the local record society, and of course much in between. We, of course, have the general guides to records in the county, including those compiled by Brett Langston and published by the Cheshire Family History Society. General items certainly do include general histories, such as a Victoria County history that we're going to hear about a bit more about later, and of course, Ormerod's History of Cheshire and Earwaker's History of East Cheshire. A lot of work about Cheshire families and compiled pedigrees for the county are the work of the late Frank Charles Beasley, Fellow of the Society of Antiquaries and Fellow of the Society of Genealogists. He died in 1931, aged 74, and he was one of the founders of the Society of Genealogists. He was an ardent genealogist and had a wide knowledge of the records relating to Lancashire and Cheshire. Perhaps his most useful publication from a purely genealogical point of view was the Calendar of Monumental Inscriptions and Wills contained in books relating to Lancashire and Cheshire, which form volume 76 of the publications of the Record Society of Lancashire and Cheshire, of which he was a council member. Much of his work will be found in the transactions of the Historic Society of Lancashire and Cheshire and in the Cheshire Sheaf. Try saying that quickly. The Cheshire Sheaf, where he was a regular columnist in the Chester Courant newspaper under that byline. So we have a lot of his working papers, notes, and compiled pedigrees for Lancashire and Cheshire families, which were made often as part of his articles and writings, and these are bound into volumes of manuscripts that he called collectanea, and he donated many of these items relating to Cheshire into the Society's library. So here, for example, from the collectanea volumes are his notes on and pedigrees, some here beautifully written up. This is the work that he did for his article in the Cheshire Sheaf. Sometimes his notes and his handwriting aren't quite as easy to read. He's got that typical antiquarian scrawl quite often. And he also transcribed other pedigrees and notes that he came across, such as his Lancashire and Cheshire local pedigrees, which we have actually, because of its rather fragile state, digitized and made available as a digital copy of the book for SOG members online on SOG Explore. We don't always catalogue all the surnames represented in all the books on our shelves in the library. However, George Marshall's The Genealogist's Guide does index many thousands of published narrative pedigrees in his work. So the Genealogist's Guide is available to members on SOG Explore and readily available on the Internet Archive. And he does indicate that there's genealogical information on the family of Bulkley in Earwaker's History of East Cheshire and in Ormerod's History of Cheshire, of course, both of which we hold in the library. There indeed is the pedigree for Bulkley compiled by J.P. Earwaker. If you search the library catalogue by surname, you'll find we do find that we have thousands of single family histories compiled and deposited with us. Some 9,000 of these are currently being scanned in partnership with Family Search. So again, that was another way of reducing the physical footprint of our shelves by scanning large numbers of books that we hold, and the digital family histories can be viewed in the library, and those which are out of copyright will be published online at a future date. The Society of Genealogists has all the indexes and finding aids to establish if a will exists, along with abstracts and copies in the document collections, or all those images of the records digitized by Find My Past and Family Search are viewable at the SOG. And of course, there are many abstracts of Cheshire wills within Beasley's notes. And of course, there's lots of transcriptions of wills relating to one particular place in the local items on the library shelves, such as transcripts of wills for Stockport, or Mary Pearson's work on Malpas, Tilston and Shocklack, where she has transcribed wills, in this case not only from Cheshire probate courts, but taken from the Prerogative Court of Canterbury wills at the National Archives as well. The county is incredibly well served by very active and flourishing local record and family history societies, so our periodicals in the library do include the Cheshire Family Historian, and also the North Cheshire Family Historian, the Cheshire Genealogist, and local record societies from Cheshire Notes and Queries, Lancashire and Cheshire Record Series, Transactions of the Antiquarian Societies, etc., down to local studies such as the Bunbury Papers, like provide a Bunbury local study. Moving from books and to perhaps our manuscript collection, the library pages will have the scanned copies of our archive finding aids for our document special and topographical collections, and the manuscript roll pedigrees. Looking at the topographical collection, these are about 150 boxes arranged by county and then by place. I forgot to take a photograph of the boxes for Cheshire. There are two of them, but they look pretty much like the Hampshire ones there. And you'll find in the online pages the topographical collection listings of what's in the two boxes for Cheshire. And these tend to be sort of miscellaneous items. As they came in, they used to be listed in the Genealogist magazine, and many of them came from donations or clearances from solicitors' deed boxes, for example, via the British Record Association, which acts as a clearinghouse for such dispersals. What's in these topographical boxes is an absolute miscellany by place, often transcriptions. Very few original documents when I was looking at the boxes. No, not like wonderful series of mortgages that I found for another parish, for example, but mostly the reason I think we have few originals in the topographical boxes because it was heavily cold in the 40s and the 50s, and we seem to give a large number of original documents from our collection to the John Rylands Library, which is just an intriguing list of original documents that we used to hold. But nevertheless, there are some original documents within the topographical collection, some of which have been microfiched for preservation purposes, such as a copy made of a list of voluntary subscribers for the Defence for the County in 1745, or a copy here of the limb tithe apportionment, and so these have been sort of taken out from the topographical collection and microfiched to conserve them. Many of our special collections comprise extensive research notes and family papers, such as notes on the Brereton family of Cheshire by Patrick Montague Smith, and again the special collections guides and reports can be found through the archive finding aids pages on the library. They'll also find an inventory of our what we call the rolled pedigrees, and that indicates that we've got 214 rolled manuscript pedigrees lodged with us for Cheshire families, and again a significant number for people called Bulkley. These have actually all been scanned and are being indexed by our members, and abstracts made of them from using GEDCOM files, and these pedigrees are currently being uploaded onto SOG Explore, which will lead you to the various pages for the Bulkley pedigrees, and if you link on those, it goes into what we call Tree Search, which is a pilot for navigating our way. I mean, there are 11 pages of the pedigrees for Bulkley, and the indexing helps you work your way through those various pages. Elements from the library and archives are being made available to members of the SOG via SOG Explore. These can range from indexed transcripts, for example, of the aboutThe schedule, quite a lot of monumental inscriptions, as I said, which we're putting up as a pilot project, older journal, pedigrees, poll books, directories, etc. So many transcripts of MIs formerly on the library shelves are now available to browse online on SOG Explore. Poll books held in our library for Chester are available to browse through, and they have also been indexed by volunteers, indexing the names across those various poll books. And you can search across indexes to collect data sets that cover more than one county, such as just by searching for the name Bulkley, but in Cheshire, you'll find that they appear in the Society's index to the tax levied on apprenticeship to the whole country from 1710 to 1810, known here as the Apprentices of Great Britain. That's our transcription and index of the tax there online. Or our, what we call the Great Card Index, a huge miscellany of all sorts of notes noted and indexed by our members. So again, there's a reference to the Bulkley as early as the 1430s, where the Great Card Index mentions that the Norfolk and Fitzalan manuscripts held at Arundel Castle make reference to George Bulkley, who was mayor of Chester in 1439. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of some of the things that can be found by using the catalogue and online finding aids and SOG Explore for members at the Society. There's a lot for Cheshire residents and their families, and I hope that the Society of Genealogists Library is of interest to you. Do have a look at the website, and I'll stop sharing there and bring that to a close.
So, and next speaker is, well, it's only Tom speaking, although the presentation is jointly sourced. Tom is Associate Professor of Early Medieval History, that's AD 400 to 1200, and Catherine is Professor of Later Medieval European History, AD 1300 to 1500, and they're both at the University of Chester. They're interested in medieval urbanisation across a long time period, which underpinned their collaboration with the Historic Towns Trust on a historical map of Chester from Roman fortress via medieval port town to modern city. Over to you, Tom.
Well, thank you very much. And Catherine sends her apologies. She has been teaching, which is why she is not present today. But this is very much on behalf of both of us. And thank you for the invitation to speak. I'll keep this short and sweet, but this is an advertisement for something that you may be familiar with from other regions. The Historic Towns Trust is creating a whole series of comparable maps and atlases for the historic towns of Britain. And this is the one we were approached to create for Chester, and I was invited to think just a little bit about what it is and how you might use it, how it might be useful to you. So this is what the map looks like. For scale, it is the size of an Ordnance Survey map. So that's next to me, and it folds out like an Ordnance Survey map. On one side, you have a map of Chester as it appeared in about 1911, 1913, when a large-scale Ordnance Survey map was created. Onto that, we have added all of the sites that we could, which were surviving historic sites or sites which have been lost, for which we have good plans that could be digitized on that Ordnance Survey map. And that's what you see on this side and on the reverse. There we go. We have a gazetteer written to the standard format of the HTT, which includes an account of the development of the city, but in particular of its defences, of its street layout, of the religious communities, of the churches and chapels, the hospitals, the historic almshouses, its city or civic buildings, schools and teacher training centres, trade and markets, public spaces, waterways, railways and mills, and public utilities. And we were able to include inserts. So each city will have its own inserts, its own highlights that it wants to draw attention to. For us, that was the plan of Roman Chester, an account of the unique rows in Chester, and a brief entry into 20th century Chester and the developments in the city at that point. So what I'm going to say, I hope, will be applicable to actually any region that you might be researching which has currently one of these HTT maps attached to it. The way these are put together is that, as you can see, a map, large-scale first edition Ordnance Survey map of the city, in this case the edition from 1913 for Chester, is used as the base map. And Giles Darks, the cartographer, creates a digitized base map onto which various layers can be added, and he color codes it according to the standard HTT color coding. So you're starting with Chester as it was in 1911, 1913, before a lot of transformations took place in the city, but post-industrialization, and that's what we see here. So the map's a really useful starting point if you are researching anyone who might exist around about from, let's say, 1800 to the early 20th century, because in a way that's the snapshot of Chester as you see it on the map before you start thinking about the historic layers that are also represented on the map. From there, we went to the 2-volume Victoria County History, volumes 5, parts 1 and 2 for Chester. I think you may be hearing more about that today. And we paired up with the VCH because that already provided us with a huge amount of the information that we wanted for the gazetteer on the back of the map. And where we couldn't find things from there, we added knowledge from some fantastic volumes like Peter Carrington's History of Chester, that you can see top right from English Heritage, or Simon Ward's Chester, a History. When we needed further information, we went to the wonderful Cheshire Archives and Local Studies, who answered some queries and allowed me special access to some of the archival materials, even though they were shut down for their redevelopment, to answer some questions in particular about almshouses, which proved tricky. We were also lucky to pair up with Cheshire Archives and Local Studies, with their Cheshire Image Bank, and with the Grosvenor Museum, who kindly supplied images to illustrate the front cover, the back cover, and the gazetteer on the reverse as well. Once we've got all of that information for the gazetteer, you're asked to identify which buildings would be represented on the map and what periods of history they cover, and therefore how Giles is going to represent them and what colour coding he's going to create for them. We were fortunate, if you don't know this already, to have a resource called Mapping Medieval Chester, which is still available to you on the internet, and its twin site, Discover Medieval Chester. These were Arts and Humanities Research Council funded projects which created a wonderful digital map of Chester as it was about 1500, and you can download those maps and the data from them. So Giles was simply able to use a lot of that material to take us up to Chester in about 1500, and then along with the Archives and Local Studies material, the Grosvenor Museum material, and the Archaeological Society, Chester Archaeological Society publications, we were able to add plans for some other sites to the map. What might you do with the map then from the point of view of family history and genealogy? Well, you have just been introduced handily to the full extraordinary range of historical sources that you might use to discover that you have an ancestor with a connection to Chester. To represent that, I have very boringly put up the National Archives guide to census records. So let's imagine that you've looked somebody up through the census records or through the parish records, and you've discovered that they have a connection with Chester. You might then come to our map, particularly if that's someone who's around in the 1800s or early 1900s, and want to know where they were within the historic city and how that part of the city developed. So again, you may be aware of these, but I point you towards the University of Leicester's online collection of trade and local directories for England and Wales from the 1760s to the 1910s. When we were researching the map, Giles was asking me to do something which is far outside my medieval comfort zone, which was to identify for him all of the significant places, particularly institutions and businesses which existed around about 1900 in Chester that could be named on the map. And the way in which I did this, in part, was by going through the trade and local directories for the early 1900s. So on there, you can select the Cheshire directories, and you can look up Cheshire, and you can discover where an individual lived within Chester. It will take you alphabetically by surname through the city. It will also include all major institutions and businesses that were operating in the city. You might then want to discover what the city looked like in previous periods. So if you've identified where the person is on the ground, how did that area of the city develop over time? Well, you can start with our base map, and you can look at the historic institutions which are identified on that map. But you might also visit the National Library of Scotland for their digitised Ordnance Survey maps. And you might want to select Chester. And then you can, as you can see here, work your way back through time using the earliest digitised maps that they've got of Chester City and work your way forwards to the 19th and 20th centuries. So to give you an example, I went off to Morris & Co.'s Directory of Cheshire for 1874 to see who I could find in an interesting part of Chester. And I found Mrs. Augusta T. Anson living on 28 Nicholas Street in Chester. So with our map, you can go and find where Nicholas Street is, and you will discover that because it's drawn to the scale of those turn of the century large-scale Ordnance Survey maps, all of the buildings are represented on there as they would have been in the 19th century. If you want to know which building Mrs. Augusta T. Anson was in, you might want to visit the Historic England National Heritage listing site, and you can then use a map search on there to hone into Nicholas Street and click on the listings that are available there, and lo and behold, we discover that number 10 to 28 is marked on the map and has a listing entry. So you can find out about the history of the building in which that person was living via the listing entry. You might then go to those National Library of Scotland digitised maps and work your way back through time. So I've had a look there at a new and accurate plan of the city of Chester by Stuart James from 1825, and shown as the same area on the first Ordnance Survey maps of the 1860s through to the 1880s, to have a look at how that part of the city was looking. And if you went back to our historic map, you would, from one side, discover what had been there in the past, and from the other side, get a potted history of the development of that area of the city. So we would point you towards the fact that this zone of the city was in fact an area that was undeveloped to the west of the Roman and medieval city until in the 13th century, friaries were created on this undeveloped area of common land. In this case, the Blackfriars, the Dominican Friary, and you can see that we've laid out the precinct of that and the buildings on the map. You then learn that it's only really with the dissolution of the monasteries that that land is sold off and partitioned into residences. So you can see Stanley Palace marked on there, associated with one of the post-dissolution families who established a dwelling place on that former friary land. And then subsequently, the development of the Georgian Terrace on Nicholas Street, in which Mrs. Augusta T. Anson would have lived at number 28. So I hope that's given you just a little taste of the way in which the map was put together, the historic information that it includes, and the way in which you might combine that with genealogical material and directories and the existing digitised maps on the National Library of Scotland digitised website. And if you want to go off and look at the full range of HTT maps, not just for Chester, but for other regions, please do visit their website. You can find the ISBN there. You can buy directly from the HTT as well at £11.99. They're a snip, and you can compare the historic development of cities all over Britain. Thank you very much.
Okay, recording again. Right. Our third speaker is Margaret Roberts, who is here, is the chair of the Family History Society of Cheshire, and as a sideline, she's a trustee of the Family History Federation. Right, over to you, Margaret.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My thanks also to the Society of Genealogists for bringing all this Cheshire information and expertise together. It's really great to be part of the day. So as you've just heard from Malcolm, I'm Margaret Roberts, the current chair of the Family History Society of Cheshire, or as we're often known just by plain old FHSC. And I'm delighted to be here to chat about Cheshire, about the Society, and more importantly, about the many different ways that we can help you research your Cheshire ancestors. But before we go any further, let's just put Cheshire on the map. There you go. Cheshire is located in the northwest of England, bordered by Wales, Greater Manchester, Merseyside, Derbyshire, Staffordshire and Shropshire. Some of you will know Cheshire well, while others may be watching or listening to the recording excuse me, from elsewhere in the UK or even overseas, and perhaps not so sure. But that's absolutely fine, because family history has a remarkable way of connecting people back to the places they may never have visited, but which were once central to their family story. Cheshire is a county steeped in history, where every cobblestone whispers tales from old. From ancient times all the way to the present day, Cheshire is more than just a county, and it's definitely more than cheese and grinning cats. It's a patchwork of stories woven through time. Long before the Romans arrived, Celtic communities were farming the land, working metal, mining salt, and trading along the rivers that served as early transport routes. And salt, in particular, was hugely important and shaped the county's economy for centuries. In 70 AD, the Romans arrived and established Diva, modern-day Chester, as a major fortress beside the River Dee, and from here they controlled access to Wales and the northwest. Salt mining expanded at Northwich and Middlewich. Lead was smelted at Runcorn and pottery produced at Wilderspool. The county retained a largely rural character for many centuries. Everything changed with the Industrial Revolution. Towns such as Macclesfield, Congleton and Bollington became centres of silk production, much of it carried out by women working in factories or attic workshops. Canals also connected Cheshire to the wider world and transformed how goods and people moved. Then came the railways. In 1837, Crewe became a major railway hub. Crewe Works grew into one of the most important railway engineering centres in the world, reshaping the town almost overnight and drawing in workers and families from across the country. So, your ancestors may have been farmers, cheesemakers, salt miners, silk weavers, boatmen, or railway workers, and understanding that wider context allows us to see not just what they did, but how they lived. And it is this rich background of people and place. It's the who, what, why, when, and where of your ancestry that help explain why the Family History Society of Cheshire came into being. By the late 1960s, interest in family history was growing, but research was far from straightforward. Records were scattered across archives and record offices, churches, libraries, large country houses, and private collections. They were often poorly catalogued and difficult to access. Many people worked entirely on their own, with little idea of where the next piece of information might be found. In 1968, Cheshire-based professional genealogist Bertram Merrill had a simple but forward-thinking idea. What if people researching their families in the same county worked together? In June 1969, Bertram appeared on the BBC's Look North and Late Night Extra, explaining, as you can read on the screen, how this new type of society could bring people together to share knowledge, preserve records, and support one another. The Family History Society of Cheshire was thereby born and formally launched, making it the first county-based family history society in the UK. Later that month, on the 28th of June 1969, 34 people gathered in Chester for the Society's inaugural meeting. The original aims of FHSC were to preserve and share local historical documents, to promote the study of family history, as I said, still quite a fledgling hobby at the time, and to offer guidance and encouragement to those beginning their research. Regional groups were formed to organise talks, meetings and transcription projects, with one of the very first tasks undertaken being the recording of the gravestone inscriptions in Tarvin Churchyard. And just for context, the annual membership subscription in 1969 was £1 whole. Those early members probably had no idea that they were laying the foundations for a society that would still be thriving nearly 60 years later. And over the next 6 decades, the Family History Society of Cheshire grew steadily in both size and ambition, but always shaped by the changing needs of family historians and by developments in technology. From those early beginnings, FHSC became a founding member of the Family History Federation, helping to shape the national family history movement. The Society later achieved charitable status, formalising its role in education, preservation and public benefit. And volunteers expanded their work far beyond those first graveyard projects. Over the years, thousands of documents have been transcribed, monumental inscriptions recorded, and detailed graveyard plans created across the county. Members have authored books, guides and indexes covering a wide range of Cheshire parishes, occupations and communities, many of which remain essential resources today. And one of FHSC's more significant contributions came with the development of the Cheshire BMD project, which later helped inspire the local BMD project across the UK. Software developed by FHSC enabled millions of birth, marriage and death index entries to be made freely available online, transforming access to civil registration records for researchers everywhere. And as technology evolved, so did the FHSC's method of information dissemination. Early duplicated information sheets gave way to pamphlets and in-house publications, later to CDs, and now to instant downloadable PDF via the Society's website and shop. The Society's journal, the Cheshire Ancestor, perhaps reflects this journey perfectly. First published in December 1969 as a hand-typed, hand-duplicated and stapled publication, it has evolved into today's professionally produced journal, published 4 times a year and available to members either as a printed copy or in digital form, with a complete archive accessible online, creating a remarkable resource. Our journal continues to fulfil the same purpose that inspired its earliest editors: to record, share, learn, and above all, enjoy one another's research. So apart from useful contact information, within the pages you'll find a list of our events and details of our various groups, help desks and research centres, all of which I'll talk about shortly. Articles and contributions from both experienced researchers and those sharing their work for the first time on many subjects from Cheshire families, places and communities to guidance on research methods and sources and studies of occupations, institutions and social history. We also have a quiz in each issue, which is quite a fun addition. And Net That Surf, our specialist section on all things computer related, with a plethora of hints and tips. The journal provides a valued platform for members to publish their research, ensuring that this careful work does not remain hidden in notebooks or computer files, but becomes part of the wider body of shared knowledge. The journal represents continuity as much as change. While its format and production have modernised, its role remains the same: to connect people through shared inquiry, to preserve research for the future, and to reflect the collaborative spirit, curiosity, and generosity on which FHSC was founded. Over time at FHSC, a series of interconnected strands have emerged, ranging from local groups and research centres to talks and events. These elements haven't replaced one another, but have built upon each other. They have evolved organically as the Society responds to new opportunities, new technologies, and new generations of family historians. In many ways, what FHSC offers today is simply a modern expression of the same idea that brought 34 people together in Chester in 1969, that family history is richer, stronger, and more rewarding when it's shared. So, we've looked at Cheshire as a county, and we've seen how FHSC began and developed in response to the growing desire to understand and preserve family history. So what I'd like to do now is to move firmly into the present and talk about what the Family History Society actually offers today, because this is often where people are pleasantly surprised. And I'm going to focus on 5 key areas, which demonstrates the many ways in which the Society can support your research. Our local groups, which are rooted in place and community. Our research centres and library help desk, providing hands-on access to records, resources and expertise. Our programme of talks delivered in both person and online. And our discussion and special interest groups, where knowledge is shared collaboratively. It is our wide range of different types of meetings and talks, which I think sets FHSC apart from other societies. And all of this is brought together through our website, which underpins everything we do, connecting members to events, resources, guidance, and to one another, and ensuring that wherever and however people engage with FHSC, they're all part of the same shared community. So I'm going to start with our local groups, which have traditionally been the backbone of the Society. FHSC has a network of 9 local groups spread across Cheshire, each run by volunteers and shaped by the interests of their local community. These groups meet regularly, usually on a monthly face-to-face basis, and offer illustrated and themed talks on local and social history, research evenings, informal question and answer sessions and social evenings, and, just as importantly, the chance to meet others. For many members, their local group is where family history stopped being a solitary activity and became something shared. Local groups provide deep knowledge of their own particular area, the nearby towns, villages, streets, churches and schools. Members often know the history of local industries, patterns of migration, which records survive, and quite significantly, which don't, and crucially, encourage friendship and sharing of knowledge. Local groups naturally lead to the important question, where can people go to work with records and get more hands-on help? FHSC currently operates 2 research centres, one in Crewe and the other in Moberly. Open to both members and non-members, they provide the key point of access to resources and expertise and form a significant part of the practical support we offer to family historians. They're far more than just libraries. They're welcoming, supportive spaces where people can access specialist family history and local history resources, receive one-to-one guidance, and talk through their research with experienced volunteers. Each centre holds an extensive collection of books, pamphlets, local histories, photographs, maps, newspapers, transcripts and indexes, all created and curated by FHSC volunteers over many decades. Visitors also have free on-site access to the major subscription websites, including Ancestry, Find My Past, The Genealogists, and the British Newspaper Archives, allowing researchers to combine online resources with physical material and local expertise. Volunteers also respond to email queries and requests for members, so even when our research centres are closed, the work continues. But perhaps the most valuable resource in our research centres are our volunteers. They bring decades of experience, deep and often highly specialised local knowledge, and an understanding of how Cheshire records really work in practice. This kind of tacit knowledge, knowing where to look, why records may be missing, or how a place or family fits into its local context, is something no database can replicate. Many visitors arrive with just a name and a date, and leave with a clearer understanding, new leads, and renewed confidence in their research. In fact, recently, one member wrote and said of her experience of a day with us, "It was amazing, just like being in my very own episode of Who Do You Think You Are?" Looking ahead, FHSC has over recent years been working closely with Cheshire Archives on the relocation of our research centres into the new Cheshire Archives buildings in Crewe and Chester, expected to be completed later this year. So a lot of change and a lot of work to be done. Paul and Brett from the County Archives are here to tell you all about that project, so I won't steal their thunder, but more to say that it's just an exciting and important step for the Society, as it will secure the long-term future of our collections and archives. It will provide modern, purpose-built facilities for our researchers and improve accessibility for visitors. And it places FHSC firmly within a modern archival environment. But significantly, it will ensure that the essence of our research centres remains unchanged. Our volunteers will still be there, offering the same warm welcome, same specialised local knowledge, and the same willingness to sit alongside researchers and help them make sense of their findings. The move also ensures that the knowledge, experience and collections built up over nearly 60 years will be protected, accessible and available for future generations of family historians, whether they're just starting out or returning to research begun many years ago. In short, the relocation allows FHSC to take forward its long-established tradition of support and expertise into a state-of-the-art setting without losing the personal human element that has always defined our research centres. Alongside our research centres, we also offer support through a network of library help desks, extending our reach into local communities across the county. These help desks operate within local libraries and provide an accessible, welcoming point of contact for anyone interested in family history, whether they are new to research or already have some experience and are looking for local guidance. For many people, a library help desk is where curiosity turns into confidence. In a familiar, relaxed, informal setting, questions can be explored at an individual pace, with our volunteers gently guiding researchers towards the most appropriate next stage of their journey, whether that's attending a local group, visiting a research centre, or taking part in one of our many online activities, while also drawing on their detailed local knowledge to help place family stories firmly within their proper context. Today, our research centres and library help desks ensure that FHSC support is not confined to a single location, but is intertwined into communities across the county. And, just as these services continue to provide trusted guidance and local knowledge, our online programme carries that same spirit of support, expertise and shared discovery beyond the walls, connecting people to Cheshire and to one another, wherever they may be. For many years, local groups and research centres and help desks were the main way people engaged with FHSC. And if members lived outside the county, or indeed the country, then a visit was either very difficult or impossible. Then in March 2020, everything changed. When the first UK lockdown was announced, in-person meetings stopped overnight. And at that point, none of us knew how long restrictions would last. Fortunately, FHSC already had a small head start. Our computer club had already been experimenting with Zoom for some months, which meant we weren't starting from scratch and were quickly able to offer online talks for our members. So in early May, FHSC held its first virtual executive committee meeting, A week later came an online computer club session, and by June, most local groups were offering Zoom talks. And in October, we held a very successful AGM online, meaning that we were one of a very few societies that offered Zoom talks to members so early in lockdown. What began as a necessity quickly revealed unexpected benefits. Geographical barriers that had previously limited attendance were effectively abolished, and the resultant inclusivity has cultivated a remarkable sense of camaraderie, an abundance of hitherto untapped knowledge, as well as adding richness and diversity to our events. With more than half our members now based outside the county and many beyond the UK itself, members found that they were able to connect with the society in ways that had not previously been possible. As one member told me, it's a whole new world. I can now attend lectures and engage with others who share my interests. I've gone from being on the outside looking in to full engagement with my Family History Society. Zoom has also allowed us to invite speakers who would never have previously travelled to local meetings. And from this grew our online talks programme and acclaimed seminar series, which now complements our face-to-face activities. As you can see on the screen, these monthly online talks cover a diverse range of topics and offer a varied programme of educational, informative and entertaining presentations. Delivered by a mix of nationally and internationally recognised speakers alongside local experts, they provide fresh insights and new perspectives. And we like to think that everyone who attends the seminar leaves having learned something new along the way. One additional and very welcome outcome of moving some of our activity online has been a way to strengthen the management of the society itself. The ability to meet regularly via Zoom has enabled us to include trustees and officers from much further afield, people who might previously have found it difficult to take on such roles. As a result, our trustee and operational body now better reflects the geographical spread of our membership, allowing us to represent more effectively the interests, perspectives and concerns of members who are based outside Cheshire, while still remaining firmly rooted in the county. Looking ahead, this broader representation will help ensure that the society continues to evolve in a way that is inclusive, responsive and relevant to its whole membership. Now, while listening to talks is valuable, family history thrives on conversation. Our unique online specialist discussion groups, together with our computer club, provide informal, supportive spaces where members can talk about their own research, ask questions and learn together. We run discussion groups covering DNA, family history software such as Family Historian and Family Tree Maker, historical newspapers, publishing your research on a number of platforms, and Mac users. These groups are not lectures, in fact, far from it. They are all very inclusive and there's no pressure to be an expert. As the adage goes, there's no such thing as a daft question. People come along to ask questions, listen, and very often discover that someone else has faced and maybe solved the very same problem that they're struggling with and can easily explain the solution while cutting through the technical jargon. Members are constantly surprised at how much they can pick up and learn from these discussions. And our computer club, which has been running for many years, provides a space where members can exchange views and keep up to date with the latest genealogical software and techniques, present alternative programs and computing methods, discuss computer administration and good practice, and untangle and learn to use new databases. Alongside these, we also run research buddies and zooming in on family history. Again, relaxed sessions where members chat about what they're researching right now. Research buddies covers a specific area per meeting, and often this is where surnames overlap and local knowledge becomes important. I've had attendees turn their laptops around to physically show the streetscape outside their window, and on a number of occasions, long-lost family connections have been made. And our latest addition to our portfolio of online meetings, Zooming in on Family History, has the strapline, "Let's chat all things family history," so the premise perhaps needs no further explaining. These wide-ranging chatty meetings have proved really popular, and our December meeting being particularly enjoyable as everyone went down memory lane to Christmas's past. Running quietly through everything I've described so far is one element that brings it all together, our website. The FHSC website acts as a single shared point of connection, a place where all the strands of the society come together under one roof. It's where members and non-members alike can find information about our local groups, research centres and help desk, view details of upcoming talks, seminars and online events, access guidance and research notes and practical help, explore publications, indexes and resources created by FHSC volunteers, and keep up to date with what's happening across the society as a whole. One particular valuable aspect of the website is its support for surname and interests. Members can explore shared surnames, register their interests, and discover others researching the same families, often leading to connections that would otherwise never be made. The website also hosts member forums, providing a space where questions can be asked, ideas shared, and experiences exchanged between meetings. These forums extend the supportive, collaborative spirit of FHSC and allow conversations to continue long after a talk or an event is finished. In addition, our online shop makes available a wide range of publications, indexes and guides produced by the Society over many years, resources that reflect the depth of research carried out by our volunteers and that continue to support family historians far beyond Cheshire. Importantly, the website ensures that however someone chooses to engage with FHSC, whether through a local group, a research centre, help desk, talk, or an independent researcher at home, they will remain part of the same wider community. It allows us to signpost support, share information and bring people together, places and research in a way that's accessible and coherent. We are at present undergoing a major revamp of the website, so this meeting has perhaps come a few weeks too early for me to be able to fully share that with you. But I am excited about the new look, which hopefully will be live on the 1st of February. So as they say, watch this space. Alongside the website, FHSC also maintains an active presence on Facebook and Blue Sky, extending the Society's reach with around 2,000 followers. They're not all members. I only wish that they were. These platforms allow us to share news, reminders and updates in a more immediate way, as well as highlighting talks, publications, discoveries and items of local interest. They also provide another means for members and followers to engage with the Society, comment, ask questions and share information or experiences of their own. Our Friday Roundup is particularly well followed and reposted, including by many other societies, as we summarise the new and updated databases on the main geological website. Other activities include collaboration with other family history societies with online talks and workshops, as well as attendance at many shows and fairs. These are great fun and allow attendees to chat to representatives of FHSC, find out what we offer, and maybe even sign up to join us there and then. During the next few years, we're also looking to arrange a series of in-person events with other Cheshire history groups and museums, so there's a lot to look forward to. So having talked about what the Family History Society of Cheshire does, the obvious next question is how can you join us? Becoming a member of FHSC is straightforward and membership is open to all, whether or not your ancestors lived in Cheshire and wherever you're based. Membership starts from £13 a year and provides access to the wide range of benefits I've described, including our programme of talks and seminars, the discussion groups and special interest groups, access to members' areas of the website and regular updates to our monthly online newsletter. Depending on the subscription package you choose, membership can also include our quarterly journal, the Cheshire Ancestor, as either a printed copy or in digital form, with access to the full archive of back issues online. You can join us via the website, just follow the on-screen instructions, or in person at one of our local group meetings, library help desk, or research centres. So, as I draw to a close, I hope I've given you a sense not only of what the Family History Society of Cheshire offers, but of who we are. We are the experts in Cheshire ancestry, built on decades of shared knowledge, local understanding and collaboration. And we're here to help you dig deeper into those key elements of the who, what, why, when and where of your family's past, from wherever that journey began to wherever it may lead. As one member put it to me recently, to be honest, the seminar programme is worth the membership fee alone. And then there are the regular chats about software, DNA, using newspaper records, etc. You certainly don't need Cheshire Ancestors to benefit. And that, I think, captures the spirit of FHSC perfectly. Grounded in Cheshire, generous in scope, and always willing to share knowledge, encouragement and support. My email address is on the screen, so please contact me if I can be of any help at all. And thank you very much for listening.
Hi, and welcome back to our, I've lost count, fourth presentation of the afternoon by Paul Newman and Brett Langston. Paul has worked in the archives for over 35 years and is currently the Archives and Local Studies Manager at Cheshire Archives. Brett Langston has been the research consultant at Cheshire Archives since 2005 and has been researching family and local history for almost 40 years. And over to you.
Thanks, Malcolm, and thanks everybody for making time to listen to this and be at this session this afternoon. Yeah, as Mark said, my name's Paul Newman. I'll be handing over to my colleague Brett in just a second, and then coming back to me. So I'll be talking a little bit about the service, Cheshire Archives and Local Studies, and in particular about the major transformation that Margaret alluded to a few minutes ago to relocate the service, part of a project funded by all these different organisations you can see in this slide. So just briefly on Cheshire Archives, we cover Cheshire East, or I should say we are funded by Cheshire East, Cheshire West, Warrington and Halton councils. So Halton, for people who don't know the geography of Cheshire, is basically Widnes and Runcorn. But Brett will unpick some of the geography and administrative units that created all the records that we hold in a bit more detail in a minute. We are currently based at the Cheshire Record Office in Chester. As you can see, the building, 19th century warehouse there at the bottom of the screen, where about half the 8 miles of archives in our care are held. We have storage as well at Deep Store in the salt mine in Winsford. Our conservation unit, our staff and volunteers are all based there currently. And until August 2024, where people could access the archives for research. You can see images there of people enjoying using archives. Now, we did pause access at that point because we are relocating, as I said, and we need to devote all our energies to getting these collections ready to be moved. We have an extensive online presence and have had for 20 or more years, including the Cheshire Tithe maps, which Brett will touch on. See an image at the top of the screen. We have an outreach program, so our service is very much about getting out there and engaging with the wider Cheshire community. Volunteer program, and importantly, we have a strong relationship with Cheshire West and Cheshire East libraries. So you can access local history resources through those libraries, as well as free access to Find My Past and Ancestry. So Cheshire in 2026, the slide says, and as I have alluded to already, we are moving to 2 new archive centres indicated on this map with red triangles. So one in Chester and one in Crewe, and also maintaining and developing in time the services we provide in local libraries across Cheshire West and Cheshire East. So at that point, and we'll come back to talk about the project to relocate the service in a bit more detail in a few minutes, but at that point I'll hand over to my colleague Brett. So we'll just move the laptop.
Thank you. I don't know if you can see me. I can't see my own face on the screen, which is probably no bad thing. But picking up from where Paul just left off, so the map on the left shows All's Cheshire, which looks quite different from the map we've just seen with the new archive centres on. Cheshire was an ancient county in northwest England, bordered by Lancashire to the north, Derbyshire to the east, Staffordshire and Shropshire to the south, and the Welsh counties of Flintshire and Denbighshire to the west. And on the right here, we've got a map by John Seller from 1701, showing the old distinctive teapot shape of the county, with the Wirral Peninsula on the left there, forming the handle, Mottram, Longdendale, and the far northeast as the spout. By 1971, the county hadn't changed too much from its ancient roots. There were some small changes in the 1890s when Cheshire lost the tiny township of Tittenley at the very bottom extremity of the county to Shropshire, and the hamlet of Micklehurst in the northeast corner to Lancashire. In the 1930s, the boundary with Lancashire was adjusted to follow the Manchester Ship Canal, that very straight line you can see on the words Altrincham MB there. Also in the 1930s, we lost a bit to the Wythenshawe estate in Manchester, which was Bagley, Northern and Northern Etchells. The white area you can see near Sale there. Also, a strip of land along the eastern side, including the part of the town of Whaley Bridge, went to Derbyshire, also in 1936. So basically, until the 1970s, this was the area served by Cheshire County Council's Archive Service, except for the areas marked by red and white stripes. As I think Elsa has already mentioned, these were county boroughs with their own local authorities and nominally outside the coverage of Cheshire. So Chester, Stockport, Birkenhead and Wallasey had their own archive services. In fact, Chester City made a separate service until as recent as 2000, before it merged with the present county service. So here's an oversight of what happened in 1974. We lost major towns such as Birkenhead, Wallasey, Hoylake, West Kirby, Brevington, Bromborough and Heswall to the new county of Merseyside. And these are now served by Wirral Archives Service. The major towns are Altrincham, Cheadle, Stockport, Hazelgrove, Marple, Bredbury, Dockinfield, Hyde and Stalybridge all went to the new county of Greater Manchester. But these were divided between the boroughs of Trafford, Stockport and Tameside, who also now have their own archive services. The village of Tintwistle, or Tinsel, as I now know it's called, at the tip of the spout, right up in the northeast, went to Derbyshire. Meanwhile, importantly, Cheshire gained the major towns of Warrington and Widnes from Lancashire. They form the area at the north of the screen there. So the effect of all this is that records for areas that have changed counties can be split between different record offices. That's enough of the background, so let's look at some different types of records, starting with civil registration of births, marriages and deaths, which, as you probably all know, started in July 1837 in this country, when England and Wales were divided into over 650 registration districts. Of course, they didn't always follow county boundaries, so until the 1930s, parts of Cheshire were in other counties. So if you look at the top right of your screen there, Duckenfield, Stalybridge, Mottram were included in Lancashire. Meanwhile, down in the south, you can see Malpas was counted first in Wales and then in Shropshire. Just to be on the other side, Biddulph, Staffordshire was counted in Cheshire until 1893. So these boundaries are also used for the census, and they can sometimes mislead you into not finding your ancestor when you search for them in the standard sources. As we've already touched upon, anyone looking for civil registration records should start with Cheshire BMD. It was the first project of its kind, set up in 2000, as Margaret has mentioned, and it provides indexes to the original local registrar's records of births, marriages and deaths, which occasionally differ from the copies sent to the General Register Office, the GRO. The local BMD indexes sometimes contain more information, such as the name of the church or a place where a couple married, as you can see here, for example. Because we at Cheshire Archives hold duplicate copies of church marriage registers, you may be able to save money by looking at the entry with us, rather than ordering a marriage certificate from a registrar. Although we're not allowed to make copies from parish registers less than 100 years old, though. Now, obviously, we don't have the civil registration records of births or deaths, so you need to apply to the registrar for those. And the same also applies for marriages at register offices, which generally a registrar had to attend and sign off on. We do sometimes have, as you can see on the screen, records of some smaller nonconformist chapels, Roman Catholic. You can see the Abney United Reformed Church there, for example, in Mossley. So we do sometimes have some of those sorts of records with us, but check our catalogue for details, more of which later. Now, although I said we don't have the original birth and death register, we sometimes have almost the same thing, which is, in this case, vaccination registers. From the 1870s onwards, local registrars had to send extracts from their birth registers to local boards of health to ensure that children were vaccinated. Some of these registers have survived for the period 1873 to 1934 in the local authority collections for Runcorn and Nantwich. Only those areas, I'm afraid, but they give the same information as on children's birth certificates, apart from the mother's maiden name, which wasn't given, or indeed the first name in many cases. Now, the same poor law system also produced the workhouses, and in fact, the registrar staff were mainly the poor law guardians and associated offices. So the Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834 required the parishes and townships to group themselves into unions managed by boards of guardians with their own central workhouses. As we've already seen, the poor law unions became the basis for registration districts, and until the 1920s, the overseers of the poor often doubled as registrars. Some records exist for all the Cheshire Poor Law unions from their founding in 1830 up to the 1930s, but their survival is very patchy and varies considerably from place to place. We have some records for Macclesfield, Altrincham, Runcorn, Northwich, Congleton, Nantwich, Tarvin, and Chester Poor Law unions. Of these, the workhouse records are the most useful for family historians. The creed registers, which we're looking at here, also functioned as admission registers, although their main purpose was to establish the religious persuasion of a person on their admission, which the Victorians considered vital for their moral welfare. Along with the admission and discharge registers, they give names, parishes of origin, the dates when people were admitted and discharged, and sometimes the names of next of kin. The workhouse population was far from static, however. Whole families were often admitted at once, or they may not all leave together. Some people went in and out quite regularly, and often the workhouse infirmary was the only means of getting medical attention. Many expectant mothers, especially those of illegitimate children without adequate family support, went into the workhouses to give birth. Now, after the poor law unions were officially abolished in 1930, the workhouses became public assistance institutions. And after 1948, a large number were turned into National Health Service hospitals or old people's homes. Sometimes the workhouse records can be found amongst those of the hospitals that succeeded them, and vice versa. Now, at Cheshire Archives, we have extensive holdings of hospital records, with registers of patients for Chester City Hospital and the Royal Infirmary going back to the 18th century. These are more by way of admission and discharge records rather than detailed clinical notes. But we also hold good sets of records for Cheshire's two mental hospitals at Opton by Chester, which is now the Countess of Chester, and Parkside near Macclesfield, which is closed. These include admission and discharge registers, death registers, and patient case notes. Like this example here from Parkside Hospital, these are often very detailed and can include photographs and patient histories, as we see here for Thomas Herbert Fogg of Stockport, who was admitted to Parkside in 1910 suffering from epilepsy. Should mention that some case notes are less than sympathetic to the patients and use terminology that would be considered offensive in these more enlightened times. Their contents can be quite upsetting in any case, as they're often dealing with people in most desperate of circumstances. All case notes for patients at Parkside before 1910 have been digitised and can be viewed for free on our online catalogue. We only have records in paper form for patients who at Parkside are up to about 1960, and unfortunately the records after that date are believed in lost or destroyed. The records of a third mental hospital at Winwick near Warrington came to us after that area became part of Cheshire in the 1974 reorganisation, having previously been in Lancashire. Unfortunately, sadly, almost all the patient case notes for Winwick were lost in the early 1990s when a water tank burst in the records storage area of the hospital. But most of the records of admissions, discharges and deaths have survived up to the 1980s. So sadly, our holdings for Winwick are not as detailed as they are for Opton or Parkside. A reminder that access to hospital records less than 100 years old can be restricted to protect patient confidentiality, which in a medical context can persist even after their death. We can look up information for relatives in certain circumstances, but usually the public are not just allowed to browse through the records, particularly the ones less than 100 years old. Now let's move on to the Diocese of Chester now. Another case where the boundaries are not what you might expect. So we serve as the Diocesan Record Office for the Diocese of Chester, which was founded in the 16th century. The diocese nowadays corresponds almost exactly with the with the pre-1974 county, I should say, but it used to be much bigger, including parts of Flintshire, Lancashire, Cumberland, Westmorland, and Yorkshire, as you can see here. Now, where possible, records have been transferred to the present-day counties that they relate to, but a lot of general administrative records that couldn't be split remain with us. These include things like records of new churches and parishes, records of clergy appointments, and ordination papers for priests serving throughout the diocese. Now, within Cheshire, there are around 90 ancient parishes in Cheshire, depending on how you define ancient. But this is the approximate number when parish registers began to be kept in the mid-16th century. Some of these, like Prestbury, you can see on the right there in orange, were very big indeed. And most of them had to be subdivided into townships to make local administration easier, with a total of 538 townships. Certain areas, like Birkenhead, Rutheath, and the precincts of Chester Cathedral and Chester Castle were extra-parochial, meaning they didn't belong to any parish, and their inhabitants had to travel elsewhere to be baptised, married, or buried. In practice, people frequently strayed from their home parishes anyway, for a variety of reasons, sometimes turning up in places miles from their usual residence, but perhaps where they had some sort of local connection through work or family. For the mid-18th century, and especially in the Victorian era, the number of parish churches increased enormously, rising from the original 90 or so to over 300 by the First World War. Although the dates vary, we hold original records for almost every parish in Cheshire, both ancient and modern, in the form of baptisms, marriages, banns, burial, and grave register. All of these are fully listed in our online catalogue. Now, entries in parish registers weren't always confined to baptism, marriages, and burials, however. Here's an example of the earliest parish register for Nantwich, which also includes an account of the Great Fire in December 1583. I'll read this very quickly. Here's a good test for your calligraphy. It was for mine. The 10th day of this month chanced a most terrible and vehement fire, beginning at the water lute about 6 o'clock at night, in a kitchen by Buring. The wind, being very boisterous, increased the said fire, which very vehemently wasted and consumed, in the space of 15 hours, 600 bays of buildings, and could not be stayed neither by labour nor policy, which I thought good to commend unto the posterity as a favourable punishment of the Almighty in destroying the buildings and goods only, but sparing the lives of many people, which, considering the time, space, and peril, were in great jeopardy, yet by God's mercy but only 2 persons that perished by fire. Signed, Alan Wright, who saw the said fire and wrote this. Do not think that all parish clerks were quite so keen to record news as local events as the one at Nantwich, although he did go on to celebrate the defeat of the Spanish Armada 5 years later. So moving on to an example of an unusually detailed parish register. So early on, some of the children's only give the names of the children's christened, which is not very helpful for genealogy purposes, without even mentioning the parents. So it was only from 1754 for marriages and 1813 for baptism and burials that registers became standardised using pre-printed forms. Now, before this, a handful of parishes in Cheshire kept exceptionally detailed baptism and burial registers. One of these was Whitton in Northwich, which you see here. From 1768, their burial registers recorded not only the parents' names, but the cause and date of death in the burial registers and where the churchyard the deceased was buried. The baptism register gives the names of both sets of the child's grandparents, as in the example we see here. So, looking at the top entry, you can see that Clara was the daughter of George Hatt Cook of Castle, a surgeon, the son of John and Isabella Cook of Tilbury in Essex, and Emily Ann, daughter of Thomas and Anne Firth of Hertford. And it gives the date of birth and the date of baptism separately. So she was born on the 18th of March 57 and christened age 4 at 17th of November 1861. Now, you might be surprised by this late date, and this is because when the pre-printed forms were introduced in 1813, the Whitton parish authorities decided they wanted to carry on recording these extra details because they're very useful. So they kept these auxiliary baptism burial registers alongside the official ones for another half century. Those of us with Northshire ancestry are very glad that they did. Other diocesan records include marriage license, bonds and allegations, and these are a good example of the types of records that apply to the whole diocese, not just to Cheshire. Licenses were generally taken out by wealthier people who wanted to eschew the more customary reading of banns in front of the congregation. They can give more information than marriage registers, such as ages, occupations, places of residence, and in the case of minors, the names of parents. The example here relates to George Brayton and Martha Cox of Nantwich in 1767. Because they were both minors, 19 and 20, respectively, George's father, another George, and Martha's mother, Mary Richards, a widow, had to give their consent. We can also infer that because Martha's mother had different surnames, she'd probably been married more than once. So never underestimate the usefulness of marriage licenses. Also, diocesan records were wills. So before 1858, these were approved by the diocesan court at Chester. And although after 1974, most wills of Lancashire residents were transferred to that county's record office at Preston, a set of printed indexes prepared while they were still in Chester have been published online on the usual sources, often misleading people into thinking they're still at Chester. The database on our website lists all the ones we still hold, including registered copies of wills approved at Chester Probate Registry between 1858 and 1940, after the church authorities were relieved of this task. We're also a bit unusual in Cheshire in that we had two classes of wills, infra and supra, depending on whether the value of the estate was over or under £40. This is the first page of a supra will, the original which runs to several pages, starting with the customary phrase, "In the name of God, Amen." In this case, the testator was the innkeeper of the George Inn at Whitton, which is now part of Northwich, but he also happened to own shares in the salt line and had a couple of boats too. It goes on to mention his wife and children by name, and the executors were also cousins of his, which is why wills can be particularly useful in establishing family relationships while other sources were unavailable. Should also mention consistory court records. This was established in 1541 with the diocese, and until the 19th century, the jurisdiction covered the moral and religious conduct of the clergy and laity, the maintenance and fabric of the furniture of church buildings, and matters relating to tithe, probate, and matrimony. Now, our records relate mainly to the Archdeaconry of Chester, consisting of Lancashire and Cheshire south of the River Ribble. The 16th century court records are being transcribed and indexed as part of the new Chester Cause Paper project, which you can see the link to on the screen there, which will eventually include images, transcripts, and translations for all the surviving 16th century cause papers held by Cheshire Archives. We have other religions too, not just C of E, so we're also the official place of deposit for the Cheshire section of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Shrewsbury, and for most of the Methodist circuits in the ancient county, and for a variety of other religious denominations as well. This is a page from the baptism register for Liskeard Roman Catholic Church at Wallasey. You may notice it's written in Latin, but the standard format is fairly easy to decipher. Not only is the inclusions of mother's maiden names in Roman Catholic baptism registers helpful, but sometimes when the child grew up and married, wherever that happened to be, a note could be added to the baptism entry, as you can see in the top and bottom entries here. So we can see it on the 10th of April 1911, Joseph Edward Peckham at the top entry married Martha Alice Payne at the same church, St Albans, Liskeard. Now, all our parish and nonconformist registers up to the early 20th century can be viewed online by subscribers to Ancestry and Find My Past. Electoral registers are another our prime collection. So although the right to vote was reformed and extended beyond a few wealthy landowners after 1832, it's only really from 1867 that the middle classes and from 1885 the working classes generally start to appear in electoral registers. These were initially grouped together by parliamentary constituency, then by polling district and township, with heads of household listed alphabetically. Now, you may be surprised to see so many women's names here in the 1894 register, such as Ellen Albert there on the fifth line down. Although the suffrage movement earned women the right to vote in parliamentary elections after the First World War, from as early as 1894 they were entitled to vote in parish or parochial elections. Rather confusingly, there are 3 sets of election registers between 1894 and 1915 for parliaments, county councils and parish elections respectively, all of which had slightly different voting qualifications. Now, no registers were published in 1916 or 17 due to the war, and when they resumed in 1918, these were in a different format, with just a single register used at all elections. Now, the exceptions being in 1918 and 1919, when voters away on military service appeared in supplementary absent voters lists, as we see here above. These helpfully give information on service voters, including rank, regiment, and service numbers. We have completed a project to transcribe the service voters list for Cheshires into a database, which can be searched for free on our website. As you can see here, they're just one of several databases, including the Overley Cemetery database, which covers a 100-year period for the largest and eventually the only municipal cemetery in Cheshire. Registers of freemen, railway staff registers, more of which coming up, military records and crew lists. So these are all available on our current website, will continue to be made available on our new website as well. Again, more of which online. Now I'm keeping an eye on the time here and trying to keep things as brief as possible. So I'm sure you'll appreciate. But here are the railway staff records. Now, the railways first came to Cheshire in 1837 with the Grand Junction line from Birmingham to Warrington. And from that point, they began to radically alter the local landscape. So we have, for example, 17 volumes of railway personnel records for West Cheshire, Mid Wales, Shropshire and Herefordshire, relating to employees of both the London and North Western Railway Company and the Great Western, covering the period 1869 to 1950. We also have a separate set for staff at crew engineering works from around 1890 to 1928, which are covered by one of the indexes I just referred to. These can tell you the stations where your ancestor was based, the date of their appointment, their age, rates of pay and position, sometimes the height, as here, and details of pay rises or cuts, promotions and demotions. None of the series we have are complete, but everything that we have is indexed on our website. Our railway collection also includes several hundred plans dating from the 1840s to the 1950s. These include engineering plans, track surveys, stations, and parliamentary plans, sometimes showing tracks which were never actually constructed. All of these have recently been catalogued and can be found in our online catalogue with an index of places. Also covering areas far beyond Cheshire, simply because the lines that ran through Cheshire, such as the one between Euston and Crewe, extend into other counties. Now, railways are just one of the businesses that we have records for. Our selection of business records can range from a local corner shop to major international corporations such as ICI. The example here shows the original agreement between John Brunner and Ludwig Mond for their chemical works at Winnington near Northwich, which ultimately evolved into Imperial Chemical Industries Limited, ICI. We also have another large collection of records from the firm of Edwin Foden & Son, which became a leading manufacturer of steam wagons and later diesel trucks in the early and mid-20th century. Now, we've touched at some maps. If we look at even earlier ones, on the left we see a lovely example of the survey of the Tolmash estate at Alpham near Tarpley in 1798. The accompanying rental book is highly unusual in that it includes drawings of the farmhouses and premises. Sadly, they're not all that detailed, but the rentals and surveys we have survive for many of the great Cheshire estates, such as Cholmondeley, Leicester, Tabley, Shakerley, to name but a few. These usually consist of maps and books of reference which give the name of the building, tenant and their holding, but also sometimes information about the conditions of buildings, the soil and their crops. But I should emphasize the survival is extremely patchy, and you'll often find a survey without the accompanying map and vice versa. On the subject of maps, our tithe records date back to the 1840s and were kept for administrative purposes to show the extent of land ownership, how much was owned in tithe payments for the upkeep of the local church. These records have been preserved and nowadays provide an extremely useful resource for local historians studying the history of property or land. A plan with numbered plots and accompanying schedule or apportionment was run up for almost every township at some point during the 1830s and 40s, dates varying from place to place. The apportionment, like land tax assessments that preceded them, recorded the names of the owner and occupier and some basic information about each plot. All the surviving tithe maps for Cheshire have been digitised and stitched together to form one giant map for the whole county. Clicking on a particular plot will tell you the owner and occupier and a description of land and property from the apportionment. You can also compare it with a present-day map or switch between first, second and third edition Ordnance Survey maps at the 6-inch scale or aerial photographs from the 1970s onwards. Now, sadly, there isn't time to look in detail at all our archival collections here, but I should mention we also have court records. These are petty and quarter sessions and county courts, records of local authorities, school records, local organisations, the Chester Guilds, local societies, clubs, and much more, including miscellaneous items such as this one, bearing the seal of Henry II. Finally, as well as archival material, we also have thousands of printed items, which are overseen by our local studies department, who also have a role in managing the local history collection in Cheshire East and Cheshire West libraries. These include books relating to Cheshire, such as John Gerard's Great Herbal from 1589, shown here bottom left, and those by Cheshire authors, such as Charles Ludwig Dodgson, born at Daresbury in 1832, probably better known to us all under his pen name of Lewis Carroll. In 2017, we received a collection lovingly put together of almost 400 published works relating to Lewis Carroll and his Alice in Wonderland adventures. Some of the books are written in languages other than English. You can see an example on the bottom right there. I should also mention that our local studies department also curates our extensive collections of Ordnance Survey and printed maps dating back to the 16th century. The last thing I want to leave you with is the Cheshire Image Bank, which is also run by our local studies team. And here you'll find over 35,000 images created from the original material, comprising photographs, postcards, prints, slides and negatives, held by us at Cheshire Archives and Local Studies, as well as Cheshire History and Heritage and at Cheshire Libraries. You can search for names, places and subjects, and even order copies of any pictures that are of particular interest. It covers all of Cheshire, ancient and modern, even those areas which are now in other counties. So that was a very quick scamper through our present Archives and Local Studies service, but I'll hand you back to Paul for a glimpse of what the future has in store.
Okay, thank you, Brett. I'm very conscious of time. So I just wanted to touch on the future of the service and our project Cheshire's Archives of Stories Shared. Now, there should be an image in that left-hand block there of one of the new centres we're moving to in Chester. But the project is about building 2 new centres for the collections and for access, a whole community engagement programme and new digital developments as well. So we're running a community engagement programme across the county, reaching a whole new audience for archives. You can see a family there having a go at writing like a Tudor. We had an art exhibition inspired by food recipes. So you can see a local group created a wedding dress inspired by the recipe for bride's pie. We can see family activities in a park in Sandbach and a film that was created with salt workers in Winsford. You can see some figures there, which I won't read through. So that's the extent of this programme so far and the geographic spread. So it is very much across the historic county across the county of Cheshire. New digital forms of access. So Brett referred to the range of databases that we have. We have the online catalogue. So if you look at the Cheshire Archives website, you'll find the online catalogue. We have the image bank, all being brought together in a single point of access in the next 6 to 9 months. And we have a new website as well called GEMS, which will be curated by ourselves with local communities. Type in a postcode and it will bring up 100 digitised items that are closest to that postcode. It's a new way of beginning to explore Cheshire's past. The new centres are due to open this autumn. You can see one for Chester on the left, one for Crewe on the right for storage, for access, and exhibitions. So here's an exhibition which tells the story of Crewe through the Archive and Local Studies collection, and we're doing something similar in Chester and something for the whole county online through our website. You can see the tithe maps and the photographs that Brett's just referred to. You can explore on screen as well in the two new centres, and a whole new space for events, for talks, for conferences, for performance, for large-scale projections and presentations as well in both centres. And importantly, our research spaces. And we have, Margaret mentioned it earlier, we have a partnership with the local Family History Society, who will be, we will have incorporating part of their library here. So we'll have a really strong local family history library within these centres. We'll have the more traditional archive research spaces and a family history help desk. So that's us. Look forward to welcoming you all later this year. And if you want to find out more about the project, your best place to go is the website. So if you Google Cheshire Stories Shared. Thank you.
Welcome to our fifth and final presentation for this afternoon. Our speaker is Dr. Paula Orcott, a Senior Research Associate at the University of Portsmouth and a contributor to the local history website, A Vision of Britain Through Time. This is co-authored with Humphrey Southall, who's a Professor of Historical Geography at the University of Portsmouth and also a contributor to the Vision of Britain Through Time website. Over to you, Paula.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our website, A Vision of Britain Through Time. So it's designed to give you information about a place. It's not about individual people, so we can't help you find information about your ancestors. It's more about being able to understand the area that they lived in and what it was like for them. You can search our website using a place name or a postcode, and we'll bring you back things like old maps, descriptions that were written in the past, and statistics. So this is the current homepage for the website. You'll note at the top we have a banner which has a search box in it. That is always visible, so if you decide you want to change the location you're looking at, you can type a new place name in at the top and it will start a new search for you. But the main search box is in the middle. So today we're going to use Chester as our example. So if I've typed Chester into the search box that you've just seen, because there are multiple places that are called Chester in the country, it will give you this list showing you what the alternative ones are, and you can select one. We're obviously going to choose the first one, in this case, Chester in Cheshire. And it takes you to the homepage for the place Chester. If there was only a single place with the name that you typed in, it would take you straight to this page. And this page is designed to work in two ways. Firstly, as a stepping stone to other parts of the website, but also to give you information straight away. So we have an outline map at the top with a marker showing where in the country Chester is. And we've got links to other nearby places if you wanted to find somewhere that was close by but slightly smaller. And underneath we have a description from a 19th century gazetteer. So we're going to look at that. So if you clicked on the further information button, it will expand to show you the whole of the entry. We have two of these 19th century gazetteers. So you read through this and you think, well, what else can I read about Chester? So we will then go to the historical writing button in the top left. If you click on this, it will take you through to a different page, offering you different options. At the top, we have other gazetteer entries that relate specifically to Chester. Underneath, we have links to entries that are associated with Chester. And at the bottom, we have writing by people who journeyed around the country in the past and their descriptions of what they saw. So to give you an example of this, we're going to choose George Head, who was a traveller in the early 19th century. He this is from his description of his tour around manufacturing districts. And what it does is it takes me to the very first entry where he talks about Chester. You can see that there's, I've got a circle around it. This is a hyperlink. All the place names are hyperlinked, so you can go back to the place page, or you can go to a different place page if you want to. You can also see there's an outline map with some blue dots. That's all of the places that George Head mentions in this entry on the in this piece of writing. So what else can we find out about Chester? Well, if we go back to the place page and we click on the maps link, it takes us to our map library. We do not have street plans. This is about the level of detail that we have. So what you have is a map window which can be extended so you can see more, and it's centered on Chester for you. Underneath, there's a list of map sheets, and what you'll find is as you pan and zoom the map window, the list underneath will update. So the sheets that are offered to you are always the closest in terms of scale and location to what you are looking at in the map window. So to give you an example, the first one in that list, you'll see we've zoomed in on this map from 1903, and it opens a new tab with the entire map sheet in it, so you can look at the margins and see if there's any notes or a legend, and you can pan and zoom this map as well. We also have links to other websites. Now, these are external websites to ours, but they also cover the whole country, and these links here will take you directly to their page about Chester in this case. This works for any location in our website. So as you can see, there are the history of the workhouse, geonames, genuki, and Victoria County History. The Locations Nearby tab offers a similar thing, but for slightly less precise locations. So you've got National Library of Scotland, you've got Geograph, the photograph website, etc. The other thing that we offer is statistics, and we offer these in two ways. Firstly, we have Chester through time. So if I clicked on this link at the bottom, it takes me through to the modern local authority, which in this case is Chester is in Cheshire West and Chester Unitary Authority. And it gives us statistics at the top, statistical themes at the top, sorry, and underneath we have all the information we have about the unit. So for my example today, I'm going to click on the life and death theme. And that takes me through to the statistics that we have about this unit. At the top, we have some graphs, and underneath we have data sets. And we're going to use total births in this case. So it presents me with a graph of the total births from the 1861 through to 2021. You can also change the tab to see the table view of the numbers that we've used for this. And the third tab shows the sources that we got the information from. The majority of the statistical information in our website is from the census. However, we do have other information like this, which is from the Registrar General's reports. Now, the unitary authorities did not exist in 1861. We've obviously used a redistribution method to get good estimates through time. But you might decide that you wanted to see the original information. We have that as well. This is the other option for the statistics. So if you clicked on the Units and Statistics button in the top left of the place page, it gives you the option to see what units we have. Now this is organised in two ways. You have the smallest units first, and then you have getting gradually bigger. You also at the top have the ones that have the extended information going back through time. And you can see the third one down is the Cheshire West and Chester Unitary Authority we've just been looking at. We also have the ward, which is in the location that we're looking at, and the Chester built-up area, which covers the urban area. We have quite a few of these because obviously unitary authorities are quite big areas. Underneath this, we have all the historical units that existed, and as you can see, there are quite a lot of Chester parishes, and underneath that are the larger districts and the counties. So if we scroll down, we could select information about these administrative districts. So for the 19th century, we've got Chester Registration District. The registration districts were the main unit of reporting in the 19th century, certainly the second half of the 19th century. And the 20th century, it was local government districts, and there you can see the figures for Chester County Borough. And as you can see, the figures on the left are quite a bit higher than the figures on the right. The reason for this is just like the map that Brett was showing earlier, showing the changes of the county boundary through time, the districts changed as well through time. So at the top left, you've got the registration district area. Underneath it, you've got the local government district, local government county borough area, which was just the urban area. The registration district was the urban area plus the rural surrounding area. And then on the right, we've got the unitary authority as it is now. So you can see that the areas are quite different for the different units, which is why we've created this series through time for the most recent units, so that you can get an idea of how that place has changed through time. And that's it. Thank you.